What's up, YouTube? You know, wrestling media is kind of like a Thanksgiving table. You know, you gotta have like the people on the side of the table. Then you got the one dude sitting up top. Yeah, this is the head honcho. We the ones, baby. Tribal Chief Sean Ross Sapp. What's up, man?
Sipping the How's water. It going? I appreciate that. That's a very kind intro of you. I greatly appreciated.
Yeah, of course, man. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. It's spring is here. The weather's nice. Beautiful Kentucky, middle of nowhere, but lots of stuff to do, lots of wrestling. It's going to be a very fun summer.
Yeah, for sure. And there's like a whole bunch of wrestling news going on right now. But I guess I kind of just want to go ahead and ask you some stuff about the wrestling news that's happening right now. Sure. What's your thoughts on the current situation of Naomi and Sasha Banks walking out on Raw?
I'm very happy that people stood up against creatives they didn't agree with. I don't know how many times we've criticized bad creative on like our own show, and we say, well, why do these people do this? Why do these people do this? I don't know how many times we've criticized the booking of the women's division, tag team wrestling in general, but specifically women's tag team wrestling. And this is a personal opinion, but if that's what they stood up for, well, then good on them, because those titles were established because they had such a wealth of female talent within the company that you needed something for 4 more people to do. 2 challengers, 2 champions, and then a bunch of people developing a division. And what have we seen since then? Almost nothing. Here and there, it's okay. But usually it's a bunch of people that have been losing. They get paired together and then, well, here you go. But if that's the crux of their argument, I agree with it. I probably wouldn't walk out during a show, but that's me. On the other hand, if I were WWE, I wouldn't have buried them on TV either. I would have, if one of the people that do my shows would have had an argument with me, I would have said, oh, they've got the night off, and I would have addressed it afterwards.
For sure. Like when I heard the line of them being unprofessional, I was like, that seems a little weird to put out on your show. And then like they wrote out that it's a scripted live television show. I'm like, that seems a little weird. Maybe don't say that about like your talent and whatnot. But you know, it is what it is. I'm not them. I'm not on payroll, so I don't know how to run that. But yeah, man, but you have such a busy schedule. Like you said before that you just got off air before you jumped on here. What is the day in the life of Sean Ross Sapp? How busy are you?
So I wake up, I try to block off Twitter like the first 2 hours of my day, because it's usually me responding to emails. I mean, a lot of people are overseas that I'm talking to in the morning, and it's like I'm getting messages from the UK from sponsors and inquiries and writers and things like that. And then the people that I'm talking to, they're early to rise too. So in the morning, I'm responding to emails, messages, calls, and all that type of thing. And I try to avoid Twitter until about like 10:30, 11 a.m. Yeah. I'll kind of scroll through there, see what's up, see the lay of the land, kind of decide what I'm going to drop for that day. Because on any given day, I don't want to drop like every bit of news that I have. I want to kind of spread it out for our subscribers. I'm editing the first round of news reports that come from Fightful. Sometimes I do that. I delegate to another editor as well. But then around lunch, I'm still making calls while I'm on lunch. I'm usually filming a show every single day. Then I usually have an afternoon show live with somebody. Got to make sure that all goes well. Almost every night I've got the nightly show, and I've got to precede that by watching 2 or 3 hours of wrestling. I try to carve out about an hour or 2 before any wrestling show to just not cover wrestling, hang out, have dinner, just be away from that. And I've tried to also carve out like my Tuesday, Thursday nights and some weekends now, because there was a point where I didn't take a day off for 5 years when I was kind of building my name, and that's not sustainable. So it's usually what I call wake to sleep days, where I'm working from the time I get up to the time I go to bed. That way I can have a couple days where I don't have to do that.
Okay, so you had some time in between. Was that time, like, what do you do during that time off? Like, you go to gym, you hanging out with family, what you doing?
Well, now that I live in an actual city, it's trying to go to the gym, even though a lot of times when I go to the gym, it'll be at like midnight, 1 a.m., something like that.
It is what it is.
Exactly. Now, if I'm doing like an MMA, kickboxing, catch wrestling class, those aren't at 2 a.m. So I got to slip into one of those 6 or 7. But it's usually figuring out what I'm going to have for dinner and sort of setting that up, going and meeting up with friends, because that's usually the time that I have there. But sometimes I just got to catch a nap, and I can't sleep during the afternoon. It's terrible. It's tough for me, but try to catch a little nap there. But sometimes you get hit up and they're like, hey, there's a business call you got to do. And You got to secure that sponsor. You got to secure that source. You got to gain that piece of information.
What would you like title yourself being at Fightful right now? Like, what's like your job description?
Oh man, it used to be managing editor, but I'm not really anymore. I like own part of the site, but I don't want to say like owner of Fightful.com. I don't want to say that because it's a negligible percentage compared to the other guy that owns it. I don't want to say minority owner because that just sounds weird.
Yeah,
I don't want to do that. So I don't know, like part owner, I would say, because a lot of people, they're like, oh, why did you not like this Raw segment that was tweeted from the Fightful account? And I'm like, I haven't run that account since 2016. They're like, why did you write this headline? I'm like, I don't do the day-to-day news writing. I do the news breaking. I do the podcasts. I manage the business side of things. Like when people think of Fightful, sometimes they think of me, and I kind of catch that blame or credit sometimes. There were people that would be like, good work. And I go, that's Jeremy Lambert that did that. So, I mean, I think it is a little bit synonymous, but I try to separate myself from it a little bit here and there.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, usually when a lot of people talk about Fightful, they talk about Sean Ross Sapp and just like combine them. But how many people work for Fightful? Because I think a lot of people forget that it's not just Sean Ross Sapp, but it is you with these other people as well.
Oh, man, I would say now, basically, I base who works with us on how many invoices I get per month, like people submitting for pay. It's over 30 now, and it quite literally started out with me and just me. They brought me on, and then I was like, okay, I got to find some writers. Then I was like, I got to find an associate editor. Then it's like, okay, I got to get a full-time writer, and I got to get 2 more full-time writers. And the more you grow and the more you delegate and find people that are trustworthy, like I've been able to find, the more success you'll have. I was a really big control freak, and it did control my life for a while. But then I found people like Jeremy and Gisberto and Alex and Joel and like all these great people that are so good at this, and they help take a lot of that off of me.
For sure. And like, how does someone get into wrestling media? Because I feel like a lot of people know what to do, but also don't know what they're doing as well.
I always tell people this: create content. And they say, where? Anywhere. You can start up your own Patreon, and it's free. It's completely free. You don't have to put anything behind a paywall. You can make every post free. They say, oh, well, how do I create content? Everything. Write news articles, write live coverage, write results posts, opinion columns, do transcripts of interviews, do articles about those interviews. And then after that, do a video podcast about what? About a topic you're passionate about. Do a review one. Do audio of that same way. Learn how to make the thumbnail. Learn how to do everything. In college now, it's not just journalism. When I was in college, I watched it go from 3 different things: journalism to multimedia journalism to convergent media. So basically what that went from is, here's how you're going to write, to here's how you're going to write, design the page that it's on, create a logo, create a thumbnail, do an audio video hit on it. You got to be as versatile as possible. And if you get at least competent at a lot of different things, they will be able to trust you with a lot of different things.
For sure. Like, that's actually something that we learned about at school, because like I concentrated in broadcast journalism, but the last semester I took, they had us do like web design. I'm like, where does that have to do with writing? But okay, I'll do it anyway.
Photoshop classes too. I had to take Photoshop class.
Yeah, exactly. Photography, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, this isn't writing, but sure, why not? But one quote I always heard, over the summer, I did classes with Booker T. He was doing like online Zoom classes on how to be a wrestler. Somehow that works. But one alliteration he always talked about was, if you can't walk into a house through the door, you got to find a way through a window. So one thing I always thought when I was looking at like your feed and just like everything you've done, how did you get into the actual wrestling media landscape? Because I'm sure you didn't just start on camera.
No, I mean, I always wanted to write or do something like that. And when I was younger, I was undersized, so I couldn't participate in a lot of sports. But then when I hit like my late teenage, early 20s years, I grew into my body and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, I can wrestle now. I can box now. I can kickbox now. I can play in football leagues, basketball leagues. I can do this stuff recreationally, not at like a collegiate level or anything like that. But I sort of caught up on that. And I was really good at the MMA aspect of it. And I was really good at the amateur wrestling aspect of it. And I had always loved that. And I didn't think it was a coincidence that those were the 2 things I was best at. So I started with those because at the time I was like, I can't be a wrestler. I was like 160, 170 pounds. And at that point, I mean, you've seen how wrestlers were back then. It just wasn't realistic. But that's when MMA was white hot. I'm talking like Brock, GSP, Anderson Silva. It just so happens that my MMA trainers were specialized in catch-can wrestling. And the people that trained them trained Josh Barnett and Shayna Baszler and Sakuraba and so many of these like legendary hybrid wrestlers. So I had that background there. And I wanted to do it. I wanted to do that crossover. So then I started to train in pro wrestling and I started to work some pro wrestling matches. And I was like, well, I don't just want to work pro wrestling matches. I want to learn how to put the ring together. I want to learn how to commentate. I want to put up chairs. I'll tape people's hands up at MMA matches. I would take any job that I could. I worked social media. I would teach kickboxing. I would teach like the beginners grappling classes and stuff because I wasn't that advanced at that point. I would take any free work that I could get my hands on. And I hit up Bill Apter, who wrote for all the famous wrestling magazines in the 80s and 90s. And I pitched him a column where I was falling out of love with wrestling and more in love with MMA and seeing if I would stick with it. I did end up sticking with it, and Bill loved my work. And he's like, hey, come on and write for me full time for no money, mind you. But I was still writing full time.
40 hours for free.
Exactly. So I was writing all the time for no money, but I was writing for the person that influenced me. And I would never recommend anybody work for free, but that's what I had to do to get in the door. I'd never asked somebody to work for free, but that's what I did to get in the door. Slowly but surely, that stuff turned into, oh, we really like what you're doing here. Come over here and we'll pay you this little amount of money or this little amount of money. The first time I got offered $100 to do commentary, I thought I made it. I was like, oh my God, look at this. But it just progressed little by little by little. I developed sources, and it's a lot of hard, thankless work sometimes.
For sure. And like you mentioned in there that you did a couple pro wrestling matches. So like, what was the gimmick? Who were you? How many times did you win? How many times were you looking at the ceiling lights?
So I think I worked like 30 or 40 matches. And since Fightful started, I stopped that. When Fightful started, I was like, oh, it's a conflict, yada, yada. Since then, I'm like, I don't really give a damn. I'll do whatever I want. If I want to wrestle, I'll wrestle. So I did 3 matches since Fightful started that nobody knows about because I did them under a mask. One of them has like 55,000 views on YouTube, but nobody knows it's me.
Can we get a promotion?
No, absolutely not. Me, the promoter, and the person I worked, no. And one person close to me. I won one of them with a very nice, I'll say, swanton. But before that, I would work as myself, and we would work locally. In Kentucky, there are athletic commissions. They make it a pain to run shows. So we would run Ohio river towns, like border towns. And I would almost always be a heel. And we would like take our MMA team over there, and we would be like the MMA team coming over to pro wrestling. We would have like the banner flags and the mouth guards and all that. And then I'd troll the town. I'd be like, hey, we wouldn't have to run this benefit for your fire department if you all wouldn't quit blowing up meth labs and et cetera, et cetera. So it was usually a heel. I would always push to lose because I don't care. It's fake. It ain't real. But there's...
Hey, what you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
But there's... I would say I won probably about 30, 40% of the matches. But I would have been fine losing every single time because it's just for fun, man.
So what you're saying is you were probably like Sin Cara V3, because I can see that. Your little swanton. I can see it.
It was a good swanton. I think I can still do it. I could do a 450, but like on a crash pad. I never tried it without a crash pad.
Yeah. Oh man, I wouldn't even try to get to the top rope. Took a couple bumps. I was like, oof, my back feels funny, but okay.
Well, I bumped on, like when we bumped, it was on zebra mats, which were like MMA mats.
Yeah.
And then we did a lot of our training in a boxing ring. So by the time I got in my first plywood ring, because there's a difference. There's plywood rings with those long pieces of plywood. Then there are lumber rings where you've got like the 2x4s. Yep. The first time I got in a plywood ring, I felt like it was a trampoline. I was so happy. For
sure. Like, I guess like one thing about like wrestling training, what was the hardest part of that training? Because I know like when I trained for a little bit, I trained at MCW down here in Maryland. But like what for me, the hardest part was just like running the ropes. I was like, I just don't get how the hell do I grab this thing and not die? Like what was like the hardest part for you?
So there were a few things. Physically, I broke my neck in 2009. So that still gives me issues today. I never really got it taken care of properly. And I broke my nose right after that. The first day I came back, broke it, never got fixed. So it's a little tough for me to breathe. But from a performance standpoint, adjusting from training on the ropes that I trained on, because the ring that we primarily trained on were real ropes, to the first indie show I did when it was cable. And it was like, it was the cable, and what they have is like this covering on there, and it's basically like really abrasive garden tube, and they didn't put any tape around it at all, like, which is what they're supposed to do. And they were wound so tight because there were a couple guys in there that really utilized that. My neck is not a developed neck because of the broken neck, so I hit the ropes and it's wound so tight. I'm like, what the hell? That was the toughest part for me. But knowing where I was in the ring was tough to transition to, because we went from this really big training ring to a much smaller ring. And when you're turning around and the rope's right there and the corner's right there, when you had all this space to work with, that was a tough transition for me.
Oh, for sure, because those like ring sizes are so different sometimes. But it almost like transition a little bit. What's like the most annoying thing about wrestling interviews? Like, is it like the performer that you're talking to, or is it like not having questions in time? Like, what's the most annoying thing to you?
When equipment fails. I just did an interview with Steve Macklin, and I did one and my mic was off. That happened with MJF too. Like it did, or it captures the wrong mics. I don't really have a lot of interviews where people aren't like happy to do interviews. Like I had an awkward one with Braun Breaker recently, but he even came up and he's like, "Hey, I wanted to make sure I did one with you because I've interviewed him before," but he's not quite used to media yet. To the point to where even Denise was like, I don't know if I'm airing mine with him. Like he's still, because he seems like he's unhappy there, even though that's just his demeanor. That's just the way he is. As far as like interview, like if they try to work me, I'm quick to be like, listen, you can say this yourself, but like, don't get me in on your work type of thing. Like, for example, Juice Robinson was leaving New Japan recently.
Yeah.
I couldn't report that I said he was leaving New Japan because I knew he wasn't. But if I do an interview with him and he says it himself, well, we can run with that because that's him saying it. That's him putting himself on the line. He's the one working, not being worked, etc. I'm not going to go out there and be a part of that work, so to speak. I'll announce that he's got a match. I'll announce that he says that he's finishing up. But I wouldn't call that annoying because I love doing interviews with him. But I'd say it's mainly equipment stuff.
Fair enough. That's always a good one right there. But I guess like a transition from that as well. It's like, who's like one guy that you talk to, like, even though you probably are well connected in wrestling, obviously, that you kind of just like popped a little bit for? He's like, oh crap, I used to watch you growing up. Now I'm like talking to you low key. So like, who was that guy for you?
Bret Hart's the biggest one. Like I grew up a big Bret Hart fan, but there's one that people wouldn't like expect that I would be surprised by. The fake Sting. The NWO Sting, the one that played the bogus Sting, was at Wrestle. Yes, he was at WrestleCade a couple years ago, still jacked.
Yeah, I believe that.
I was there with Jeremy, and I was like, should I interview him? And they're like, why the hell wouldn't you? And I was like, here's my thing. I didn't want to walk up and say, hey, guy who got famous pretending to be another guy, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you got famous pretending to be somebody else. Like, I didn't know if it'd be offensive. And he was like, no, man, sit down right here. Let's have a chat. He was wonderful. He was awesome. But that's one that kind of starstruck me. But there was one that I actually didn't grow up watching, Ricky Morton. Like, I was not a Ricky Morton fan growing up, but I was in North Carolina. That's Ricky Morton country, my friend. And he's walking right up towards me. Am I allowed to curse here?
Yeah, say whatever you want.
Okay. And Ricky Morton's walking right to me. This is Jesus Christ in North Carolina. Like, he's walking towards me, and I'm like, who's he going up to see? And he walks up to me, and he goes, brother, I'm begging you to give me a fucking follow back on Twitter. And I was like, what? Me? And then I look, I open it up, and it was him trying to get me to get a tryout for his kid somewhere. And I was like, no wonder you want me to follow you back. But my friend Jeremy was there, who does a lot of the writing. And I was like, oh, Ricky, this is Jeremy. He does a lot of our writing. And he goes, brother, nobody gives a fuck. And I lost it. We all died. Man. That was like one of the most starstruck moments for me, because in North Carolina, that guy is such a big deal. And him to walk up to me like that, I was like, I can't believe he even knows who I am.
To add to that, Kerry Morton, very talented in the ring. Dude is good. He's killing my NWA right now. But like, what's like one story that you were fed, or that you were sent, or someone sent you a story that you decided not to run, that you would like soon like regret? Like, oh man, I should have said whoever.
Well, I can tell you an interview that I did that I absolutely didn't run. I took an interview with Alberto Del Rio, because I'll accept an interview with almost anybody if they'll be responsible. But it was like 10 minutes of him blaming other people for shit that he did. And I was like, I cut it short and I said, we ain't doing this. I got no respect for you. This ain't happening. And I canned it. As far as stuff
when you told you say that to Del Rio, right?
Yeah.
And what is his response?
I don't know. I cut the Zoom. Cut the Zoom.
I thought this was like a person for a minute. I'm like, oh no.
No. And I mean, I probably wouldn't have done it in person anyway, but so I'm trying to think. Well, there was one of the first big scoops I could have had was Ronda Rousey at WrestleMania. When she did the spot with The Rock, I knew she was going to be there, but there's no way I could run it without burning my source then. And that ended up paying off really well for me, because that person helped me out a lot in the future. But I did wish at that point of my career, I was like, man, I really wish I could have put that out there, because that would have been big for me. But I would have had no follow-up. There would have been these people that followed me for these scoops. And at that point, I would not have had any. So that's one that I think back to.
For sure. And like, what's like one story that I guess actually no, the question I really want to ask is, so we all know about CM Punk. We all know that you're the guy that broke that news, but you also mentioned before that you also broke the Daniel Bryan leaving WWE. How do you eventually get to the point, and you have to say names, but like find these sources, find these people that feed you this kind of information?
A lot of times it is cultivating sources before anybody else cares about them. If you show somebody that you cared about them before they were somebody worth caring about, so to speak, they will not forget that. And you always treat people the way you want to be treated. If somebody's nice to me, I'm going to be nice to them. If they are a jerk to me, I'm going to be a jerk to them. And most wrestlers are like that too. They're going to be pretty decent to you. They're normal humans. But also, like if you're crappy to them, they're going to remember that too. But also, if you're willing to, for example, Johnny Gargano is a person I've got a pretty good relationship with. He initially wasn't keen on Fightful because of a headline we did. And I reached out and I was like, listen, man, I'm really sorry about that. It shouldn't have happened that way. I think that spoke volumes to him. And we remained on positive terms. It was Johnny Gargano wishes he could get pregnant so Candice LeRae could keep wrestling.
Yeah, I can see why he wouldn't like that.
So he didn't like it. He thought it was clickbaity, and it was. But it also wasn't malicious. I never get involved in people's personal lives. I don't care who they're screwing. I don't care who they're married to, dating to. I don't care who they're cheating on. I don't care if their pregnancy is their business. Like that type of stuff I stay out of. And I think there's a lot of people that have kind of recognized that. Like, again, I don't care because I don't know the nature of your relationships, and I don't care because it doesn't have anything to do with wrestling. So a lot of wrestlers have sort of landed there, but sometimes I've just got people out of the blue that will contact me. And fortunately that helps an awful lot too, because once upon a time, I didn't have that. I had one or two people that treated me like human beings in wrestling. EC3 and Matt Hardy were the first two guys that treated me like I was a normal functioning human being. And they wouldn't like give me scoops, but if I came up over the course of a conversation to somebody else, they'd be like, yeah, he's a good guy.
Well, there you go. You love to see it. But one thing that's also, this is completely off topic. You live in Kentucky. How often they talk about Jack Harlow there? Because like his album's going crazy right now. I'm just very interested.
Never.
What?
Never. I live about an hour from where he's at. Never. I only hear about him on Twitter. He's not on the radio much, if at all. Like even on like the hip hop,
I'm trying to hear.
even like that on like the hip hop station out here, like not at all. Jack Harlow is not like never.
He talks so much about like being hyped up in Kentucky. I'm like, oh, maybe he must be like Ricky Morton down there, but I guess not.
In Lexington, I don't hear it, but maybe I need to pay a little bit more attention. Hey, I'm happy for him. I'm always happy to see somebody from Kentucky do something good. I like Bryson Tiller too. I like the fact that he did some really good stuff too.
Man, that's so disappointing. I thought I was gonna catch you off guard. You're going to this long Jack Harlow rant, but okay, whatever. That's fine.
I wouldn't be able to tell you a single song that I've heard of his on the radio. But
not even what's popping, not one time.
Not that I've heard. I could be wrong though.
Man, Kentucky, y'all tripping, but it's okay. GCW, you're in the cluster. I'm not gonna say the word. You can say it if you want. I was born to be a Christian, can't say it. But yeah, you were in that match. How was your experience of like walking out to the crowd and then your eventual elimination?
Oh man. So I did a full podcast with Denise Salcedo about it. And it was, first off, having her ring announce me was one of it was one of the happiest moments of my career. Cause Denise she's like family to me. She's like a little sister to me. One of the reasons I like her so much is because her work ethic matches mine. And I like the way that I put it to her is I wanted us to look like Team Rocket from Pokemon in wrestling. And then I wanted her to turn on me. Yeah. I wanted us to be as obnoxious as possible. If I could have had a theme song, it would have been like Bad Baby or somebody like that. Like the most obnoxious stuff you could imagine. Right. Like what's the one person that you could play and nobody would like? There you go. Yeah. So I wanted to immediately heel on Denise, and because everybody likes her.
No, you should come out with Jake Paul, actually. I think that would have worked a little bit more.
There you go. Like anything like really obnoxious I wanted to do. But I was supposed to be more obnoxious. Me and Shaza always like troll each other on Twitter. I was supposed to kick her in the head on the way out to the ring and troll her a little bit. But Maven was out before me and carried her out like a big heroic baby face. So I get out there and I'm like, oh no, Shaza's not out here. What do I do? And fortunately, people were handing me $5 bills, so I was snatching those up. There were people that were supposed to be in the ring that weren't in the ring, so I was like, oh no, what do? I panicked a little bit, and then I was like, no, we got this. The most flattering thing to me is that Josh Barnett wanted to do the spot with me, and Josh Barnett trained with my trainers. I never had the opportunity to do that. I trained enough to know what I was doing and to take care of myself if somebody like jumped me or something. But Josh trained with my coaches, and like to have like a guy that did that in the ring with me, like that was so cool. And also he backed down. He was very scared of me. He was very intimidated by me. He's like, please, Mr. Sean Ross Sapp, don't hurt me. And I was like, okay, Josh Barnett, I know you've won a UFC title, but I won't hurt you. It was really positive. It was really happy. I've had some booking inquiries since then, but I'm probably not going to do anything like that again unless I'm actually wrestling. Like I'm going to train and get back in the ring, see how I feel, and might do some actual matches or some actual spots. But there's a couple of scenarios that I do, but I probably won't do a spot like that again for a while.
That's fair. Who's like, give me like a top 5 list of people you want to get in the ring with if you have the opportunity.
Shaza. I legitimately want to do something with Shaza McKenzie. I've got a friend, Allie Cease, who is training to be a wrestler, who a good friend of mine. I think there's something fun we could do there in that sense. But Akira, who is a deathmatch wrestler, who actually trained with one of my coaches. I would like to do something with him. Like I'd like to do
a death match though.
No, I wouldn't do a death match. In fact, I would want to do the opposite of that. Like I'd want to powerbomb somebody onto gummy bears and hit them with pillows and stuff like that. Maybe the opposite. I wouldn't have a choice but to implement some of like some comedy aspects into that because I ain't doing a death match. But I would also like to do some serious stuff. Like I'd love to do like a blood sport style match with Akira because those are the only 3 that have stuck out in my mind. My coach, Jay Grooms, I did a bunch of matches with him. He hasn't wrestled in a while, but I'd love to do that. But I would have to do it would have to be something that's plausible. Like I'm not trying to go in there and disrespect anybody or put something out of the realm of believability, because while I did train and all that stuff, I've been away from it for a while. And I don't think I was terrible when I was in the ring, but I'm not Bryan Danielson or anything like that by any stretch.
Yeah, no, you're Sin Cara. We already talked about this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would also consider doing something with Brian Alvarez. I don't know him, but it makes sense to do like
Clash of
media guy. But I mean, also he is a legitimate black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He would choke 95% of people in the world out unconscious within a minute. So those are the ones that I would do. Like, there's no like big names that I would imagine, unless it would be like me coming off the ropes and getting knocked out immediately for the sake of it making sense.
I really was hoping you were going to say like Calvin Tankman or someone. Like I was trying to see someone.
Oh my gosh.
Massive.
I
drove him to his hotel just like 2 days ago. I'm like, he sat in my car and my car did this. I was like, okay, yeah. All right, relax, God. This suspension.
I'd do something with Mojo too. I love Mojo.
Raleigh. Okay, all right, that's a good one. That's a good one. Here's a curveball question that's completely off topic. Have you ever been contacted by the WWE or AEW to actually join their team in any capacity?
I had a feeler from WWE, which is a very informal thing. It was not them saying, here's a job. It was a feeler saying, we've got some positions open here, here, and here. I think you'd be good for it. And I reached out to, I can say it now, I reached out to Matt Hardy. And I said, what do you think about this? I don't think I'm going to do it, but what do you think? And he said, all due respect, they don't want you for what you do well. They want you to keep you from doing what you do well. And the person that got hired for one of those spots that was mentioned got fired like within a week. And they came from like
writer that like didn't know who Bobby Lashley was.
No, not them. Okay. Not them. This is like 2018, 2019. I can't remember when it was, but there was no real formal thing. Like, yeah. And I'm also pretty sure that if some people would have gotten my application up through there, they would have been like, get rid of this. But if they lasted a week, I would have lasted less time. I'm not cut out for that. I'm not cut out for the travel. I don't want to live in Stamford, Connecticut. I like Kentucky. I love it here. I like working from my home. I like doing what I'm doing because I get to learn about wrestling every day. But that's it. I've had some other companies that have asked to work with me and do some consulting, but I felt like that was a conflict, and I'm not really interested in that. And to specify, anytime I do a commentary job, anytime I've wrestled, anytime I will wrestle, I don't keep any money from that. It gets donated because I don't want there to be a perceived conflict. I do that stuff because it's fun, not because I'm trying to get paid from it.
I mean, I was about to make a joke, and then you said it went to charity. I was like, oh, I was about to say hand it over, but okay, fair enough. But my last two questions for you, Sean. How does someone join the Fightful team if they are looking to actually join? And is Fightful even hiring people, I should say, too?
Not actively. We always post when we are. We do like to promote from within. We like there to be experience. But my email is in my bio. You can always send like a packet of stuff along. And never apply for a job without samples. Never, ever, ever hit us up for work unless you got samples. And if you don't have samples, make some samples. Writing samples, video samples, anything like that. But my email's in my bio on Twitter.
There you go. And then my last question for you, Sean, is who is Sean Ross Sapp?
A wrestling media shit poster.
I thought we were going to say Sin Cara again, but yeah, that works. All right, there you go. Sean, where can I find you on social media?
At Sean Ross Sapp. I prefer you follow at Fightful, which I do not run. I don't run Fightful Select or Fightful MMA, but please follow those. I greatly appreciate that. I care more about building our individual brands than my own personal social media, but we are on FightfulSelect.com. Quite honestly, about 70 to 80% of the breaking news that comes out of pro wrestling, we're breaking now. We've got over 7-8 weekly shows over there as well, and it's only $5 a month, and it greatly supports us. We also do post shows after Raw, SmackDown, AEW, pay-per-views, and now Impact as well. NXT as well. Check us out.
Guys, there you go. We'll link everything in the description down below. Make sure to like, comment, share, and always subscribe. Sean, thank you for coming on. Head honcho, much appreciated. Sin Cara, and we out.
We going up like 1,000. I'm a flex just like a muscle man Malcolm. We going up like 1,000. I'm a flex just like a muscle man Malcolm. When it just like 1, 2, 3. If you like the channel, this will squeeze. If you like the channel, this will squeeze. If you like the channel, this will squeeze.